I used to think betrayal announced itself, that it arrived loud, obvious, dressed in guilt and confession, that it needed witnesses, that it shattered things instantly. I was wrong. Our house didn't break. It kept breathing. Every morning I woke before the alarm, not because I was disciplined, because I was needed. Someone had to pack lunches, find missing shoes, sign school papers with a pen that never worked the first time. I was good at being necessary. My son Daniel was 12, old enough to notice patterns, old enough to stop asking questions when answers felt dangerous. My daughter Lily was 7, still convinced the world was held together by routine. Breakfast meant safety, bedtime stories meant order, parents meant permanence. My wife moved through the house like someone rehearsing another life in her head. She wasn't cruel, that would have been easier. She was efficient, warm when required, absent in ways that didn't leave fingerprints. I told myself this was marriage, time, fatigue, adult gravity. There were signs, of course there were. I saw them later, lined up neatly like evidence. At the time, they were just inconveniences. Her phone face down, late grocery trips, a smile that arrived too fast and left too clean. The children noticed before I did. That's the first truth no one likes to admit. One evening, Daniel lingered in the hallway instead of going to bed. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed too tightly for a boy pretending not to worry. "Dad," he said, not looking at me, "do adults ever change their minds about things?" I asked him what he meant. He shrugged, a careless movement badly acted. "Like promises." I told him promises were serious, that adults broke them sometimes, but it didn't mean they stopped caring. He nodded, too quickly. That night, Lily crawled into our bed after a bad dream. She pressed her face into my shoulder and whispered, "Mommy smells different lately." I laughed softly, told her grown-ups changed perfumes. She didn't laugh. Children collect truths the way adults collect excuses. The night it happened, the night everything tipped, I wasn't home. That matters. I was late. Work, traffic, a life that still believed it was intact. When I pulled into the driveway, the lights were on in rooms that should have been dark. The house looked awake. Inside, everything was quiet, too quiet for a family with children. No TV, no footsteps, just the hum of electricity, and something else, tension, thick and unsettled. Daniel was sitting on the stairs, not slouched, not relaxed, waiting. "Hey," I said, "why aren't you in bed?" He stood up too fast. His face had gone pale in a way that didn't belong to sleepiness. "Dad," he said, and stopped. Lily peeked out from behind the banister, clutching her stuffed rabbit by one ear, twisting it slowly until the fabric stretched. I remember thinking, absurdly, that I needed to fix that toy before it tore. "Where's your mom?" I asked. Daniel swallowed. "He's in the bedroom," he said. Then, after a pause that felt like falling, "Not alone." The words didn't explode. They sank. I didn't run. I didn't shout her name. I didn't go upstairs. I looked at my children, really looked, and saw something had already been taken from them. Not innocence, responsibility. Daniel was standing between me and the stairs without realizing it. Lily's eyes were wide, not with fear, but with confusion so deep it had nowhere to go. "What did you see?" I asked gently. Daniel shook his head. "I don't want to say it wrong. That sentence will follow me until I die." I told them to go to the living room. I told them to sit together. I told them I'd handle it. What I didn't tell them was that from that moment on,
Nothing they did would ever feel innocent again. I went upstairs alone. I won't describe what I found. Not because it was graphic, it wasn't, but because it was clear. Clothes displaced, not removed with urgency, but with familiarity. Laughter cut short. A man whose name I didn't yet know standing in my space like he had rehearsed being there. My wife didn't scream. She just looked tired. That was when I understood. This had been happening long enough for shock to wear off. When I came back downstairs, the children were exactly where I'd left them. Lily had fallen asleep against her brother's side, thumb in her mouth. Daniel stared at the floor like it might confess something if he watched long enough. He looked up when he heard my footsteps. "Did we do something bad?" he asked. No child should ever have to ask that question. I told him no. I told him this wasn't their fault. I told them they were good. All of that was true. None of it would save them.
And still, it changed nothing. That night, Daniel locked his door. Lily slept with the light on, and I sat alone in the living room, realizing that the truth hadn't freed us, it had simply chosen sides. After the truth, nothing exploded. That was the cruel joke. Life didn't collapse in a single cinematic moment. It thinned, it stretched. It became something you could see through, but not escape. My wife didn't leave right away. She stayed, as if proximity alone could undo what had been said. She cooked dinners no one ate properly. She bought Lily a new backpack she didn't ask for. She asked Daniel about school with a brightness that felt rehearsed. Daniel answered politely. That hurt her more than anger would have. He had learned something essential. Politeness is a form of distance. Lily avoided her mother in small, instinctive ways. She chose seats closer to me. She waited for me to read bedtime stories, even when her mother offered. She stopped reaching for her hand in public. None of this was announced. It didn't need to be. Children punish with absence. At night, after they slept, my wife tried to talk. "I feel like they hate me," she said once, sitting on the edge of the couch like a guest afraid of overstaying. "They don't hate you," I said. "They don't trust you." She flinched at that word. Trust sounds optional to adults. It is oxygen to children. Daniel stopped calling her mom when talking to Lily. He used her name instead, carefully, like a blade he didn't want to cut himself with. Lily noticed. She copied him. One evening, I overheard Lily asking Daniel a question in a whisper, meant to be secret but heavy enough to travel. "Is Dad going to leave too?" Daniel didn't answer right away. "No," he said finally. "Dad doesn't leave." That sentence became my sentence. I stayed because leaving felt like confirming their worst fear. I stayed because someone had to be predictable. I stayed because damage doesn't make sense to children unless an adult explains it with actions. My wife mistook my staying for forgiveness. She began to talk about working on us, about therapy, about starting over. She never once asked the children what they needed. When she finally moved out, it was quiet. Boxes, a car trunk closing, a hug Lily endured stiffly, arms at her sides. Daniel didn't come outside. He watched from his window, face blank, learning another lesson he hadn't asked for. The house exhaled after she left. Not relief, space. We settled into a new shape, a smaller one. Daniel took on too much. He watched Lily after school. He reminded me about forms and meetings. He learned to cook eggs without burning them. Adults praised him constantly. "You're such a good big brother." They didn't see the cost. Lily became careful with joy. She laughed, but only halfway.
like someone testing ice before stepping fully onto it. She asked me once, out of nowhere, "If someone loves you, they won't make you feel stupid, right?" "No," I said, "they won't." She nodded, storing that away for later use. Years passed. Children grow even when they're damaged, especially then. Daniel became sharp, observant, intolerant of weakness, especially his own. He never spoke badly about his mother. He simply removed her from his emotional vocabulary. Lily remembered more than we thought. She remembered smells, doorways, waiting. Those memories shaped her silently. My wife visited. Birthdays, holidays, short, careful encounters filled with gifts and restraint. She told me once in private, "They'll understand when they're older." I didn't correct her. Some misunderstandings don't mature into clarity. They fossilize. On Daniel's 18th birthday, he asked me to go for a drive. We drove without music, without hurry. "You know," he said eventually, eyes fixed on the road, "you used to think if I told you, everything would go back to normal." I said nothing. "When it didn't," he continued, "I thought maybe I ruined things." "You didn't," I said. "I know," he said. "Now." That pause mattered. But I still wish I hadn't had to be the one. So did I. That night, I realized the deepest cruelty of what happened wasn't the betrayal. It was that my children had been forced to grow up at the exact moment they still needed someone else to be in charge. Time doesn't heal everything. Some things it just teaches to live quietly inside you. The house is smaller now, not physically, emotionally. Rooms that once held noise now hold air. Lily's old drawings are gone from the fridge. Daniel's trophies sit in a box in the garage because displaying them feels like pretending something was won. Daniel left first. College, another city, another version of himself he could build without witnesses. At the door, he hugged me once, firm, brief. "You did what you could," he said. It sounded like forgiveness. It wasn't. It was closure. Lily stayed longer. She grew into a quiet teenager, polite, insightful, distant in ways that worried teachers and impressed adults. She learned how to read people frighteningly well, learned which smiles were real, which apologies were just rearranged excuses. She didn't forgive easily. That, too, was a lesson. One evening, years after everything, we sat at the kitchen table, the same table where crayons once snapped, where truth once landed too heavy. She was 18 then, almost gone. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "Why didn't you stay?" The question was calm, no accusation, just curiosity sharpened by years of thought. "I stayed for you," I said. She considered that. "Yes, I know. But did you ever stay for yourself?" I didn't answer. She nodded slowly. "That's what I thought." My wife tried, in her way. She invited them to dinners. She sent messages that began with, "I know I messed up," but she wanted redemption without excavation. Daniel stopped responding altogether. Lily replied occasionally, briefly, kindly, like writing to a distant relative. One afternoon, Lily came home from visiting her mother and went straight to her room. Later, she knocked on my door. "She wants me to believe it didn't matter, that it was just a mistake." I waited. She said, "Love is complicated." I nodded. Lily looked at me with a clarity that hurt. "Love isn't complicated. People are." Then she smiled, small, sad, and went back to her room. That night, I realized something final. My children had outgrown both of us. Not because they wanted to, because they had to. Years later, Daniel called me from a different country. "I'm engaged," he said. I congratulated him, asked about her, listened. Before hanging up, he said, I told her everything. That's good, I said. Yeah, he replied. I won't let silence do that again. After the call, I sat alone in the quiet house. I thought about that night on the stairs, about a boy who learned too early that adults fail, about a girl who learned too early that love could disappear behind a closed door. I thought about myself, a man who stayed, who endured, who believed presence was enough. It wasn't. Presence without protection is just proximity. My wife remarried. She posts pictures sometimes, smiling, light, redeemed in her own story. I don't hate her. Hate requires energy. What I feel is heavier. I live with the knowledge that my children did the bravest thing in this story and paid for it anyway. They told the truth, and the truth did not save them. That is the cruelest ending I know.